When I heard that this movie was being made, I was conflicted on whether or not to see it. While a ton of films have been shot in Detroit, only a handful off the top of my head have actually been about Detroit. RoboCop, 8 Mile, and now Detroit. And those haven't portrayed Detroit in a positive light. This film is about an event that still affects the city today, even though most people here don't want to talk about it or think about it anymore. It happened and we're trying to make the best of it and continue on to something greater. Still, it's a movie about the city I've lived in most of my life, so I probably should see it just to see if the filmmakers do the city and the event is portraying any justice. And they do, to a degree. Directed by Kathryn Bigelow, Detroit follows a group of people who all diverged on the Algiers Hotel during the 1967 Detroit riot. It's important to point out that the film isn't about the riot, what led up to it, or the aftermath of it. Its main focus is what happened at the hotel. The riot itself is used more as the background of the film. A good way to think about it is how Dunkirk is about one event in World War II and not about the totality of the war itself. Acting across the board was great. I know people will say that most of the cops in the film were one note or evil, but that's how it was then. Corruption was from the bottom to the top. You could argue now corruption is from the top to the bottom, and it's just that people and cops nowadays hide their own true feelings better. But that's another video. Anyway, the cast wasn't too large, so we did get to know each character, even the ones that first who seemed like they only would have small roles. Each actor made the most of their time on screen. For the most part, the environment and the era were recreated faithfully. The music and fashion were on point. That said, only a few shots were actually shot in Detroit for reasons. Gee, thanks Governor Snyder and Michigan State government. I guess we just can't have nice things. Most of the film was shot in Boston for reasons. The period era costuming were excellent as well. It didn't come off like the actors were trying to play dress up. They actually looked like how people looked during that period of time. And also for the first half of the film, it was paced really well. However, some negatives I do have is the film was shot on handheld cameras, so there was a shakiness to just about every single scene. That worked during the high tension scenes. Unfortunately, it got annoying and off-putting for the rest of the film. If someone's having a light conversation, there's no need for it to be shaking around. Also, while the 1960s era music was good, the score seemed non-existent. It was completely unremarkable, which is odd since it was by James Newton Howard. Also, the pace for the second half of the film seemed to have a stop-start quality to it. Part of the reason I think is the inclusion of the music group and its lead singer. It makes sense for him to be in the story, but whenever we go back to him, the film seems to feel off during those moments. Also, since most of the film isn't filmed in Detroit, not all of the set recreations felt authentic. An example would be the Fox Theater. Since I wasn't born at the time, I can't be 100% sure, but some of the pics I've seen in the past, the Fox even back then had a grand, majestic interior before it was renovated. On a complete side note, based on what people have said in the past over the years, there were business owners who torched their own businesses for the insurance money and used the rights as a convenient excuse. In some cases, people saw the owners do it. Also, the opening is done in an animated montage. I like that, but after watching the entire film, I just wish that Kathryn Bigelow would have spent more time and actually show what led up to the riots. Show the growing racial and cultural tensions right before and the breaking point. It doesn't have to take up half the film. It could just be the first 15 to 20 minutes of it. Well, that's not the type of story she was going for, so I just have to judge what she produced. I do recommend this film. It's a good film. It's well acted, directed, has a ton of tension, but it's also really brutal. Everyone should see it. Most won't, probably for reasons. Looking back at Kathryn Bigelow's previous two films, I prefer this one over those two. It's not perfect, but it's more better realized than those were. My main issue with the film though is that I feel more need to be explored about the rights. I think most of the people that go to this film aren't going to be from Detroit or an urban city, and they might feel a bit unfulfilled and want to know more about the before and after, even though they most likely won't go online or ask someone that knows more about it, though. I don't want another film about the 1967 riots, though. As I noted earlier, the only films I can think of set in Detroit don't show it in a good way. Next time, I want more variety. Heck, a few years ago, there was a Motown musical play made. Adapt that. Or how about a film about the founders of Focus Hope? It was an organization founded after the riots to help the people of Detroit. It's still around today, making a big difference. Or hey, how about ESPN's Dick Vitale? He was the former University of Detroit and Detroit Pistons head coach. He has an interesting story and a very big and bombastic personality that would work well on the big screen. Oh well.